Good evening. So glad to have you with us here this evening. Let's take our hymnals. Let's stand together and turn to hymn number 583. Hymn number 583. Hold my comrades, see the signal waving in the sky. Hold the fort. We'll sing the first, second, and last this evening. Hymn number 583. Let's stand together and sing out, shall we? Oh, my comrades, see the signal waving in the sky. Reinforcements now appearing, victory is nigh. Hold the fort, for I am coming, Jesus signal still. Wave the answer back to heaven, by thy grace we will. See the mighty host advancing, Satan leading on. Mighty men around us falling, courage almost gone. Hold the fort, for I am coming, Jesus signal still. Wave the answer back to heaven, by thy grace we will. Fierce and long the battle rages, but our help is near. Onward comes our great commander, cheer my comrades, cheer. Hold the fort, for I am coming, Jesus whispers still. Wave the answer back to heaven, by thy grace we will. Good. It's hymn number 544. Work for the night is coming. We'll sing the first and last this evening. Hymn number 544. Work for the night is coming, work through the morning hours, work while the dew is sparkling, work mid springing flowers, work when the day grows brighter, work in the glowing sun, work for the night is coming, man's work is done. Work for the night is coming, under the sunset skies, while their bright tents are glowing. Work for daylight flies, work till the last beam fadeth, fadeth to shine no more. Work while the night is darkening, when man's work is o'er. Great singing this evening. You may be seated.
If you have your Bibles, join me in James chapter 3. James chapter 3. We are glad to have some special guests with us tonight. We have the Whites, missionaries to Costa Rica, here with us. We also have people here for a wedding, from what I understand. So Delena's wedding is coming up this weekend, and so we've got different folks who have come in to be a part of that. In fact, if I could get a few men afterwards, we need to move the chairs. They don't match the decor. So right afterwards, if I could get a few guys to help us get those chairs out of the choir loft, I sure would appreciate it. How long does it take to master a task? Well, there's research that's been done on it. Some people would say that to master a skill today, you need about 20 hours. And in about 20 hours, you can learn a skill, you can begin to apply the skill, and then over time, obviously, you'd get better at it. But it takes about 20 hours to develop a skill to really begin to grow in it. Now, that's one school of thought. The more traditional school of thought is that to master an area, and generally speaking, and this is a little bit of a stretch, but generally speaking, we're talking about a language or a musical instrument. To master that, you're talking between 6 and 10 years or around 10,000 hours, depending on your natural abilities, to master that task in front of you. So if either of those two are remotely true, it would be fair to say that if you had done something around 30,000 times, that you would begin to be good at it. There were two young men who met in 1959. They began to work together, and as they worked together over the next 44 years, they developed their craft. Their craft was magic. They were illusionists. They would set out and they began with small crowds, and it quickly grew into huge crowds. Over the course of their 44 years, it is believed that they entertained and performed in front of 40 million people. The shows that they did varied throughout the years. They grew in extravagance, but their shows often contained one commonality, and it was wild animals. They would do different tricks and different illusions with these wild animals in their show. 30,000 times. And yet, 15 years ago this month, the two men walked out on the stage to begin another show. They were masters of their craft. But as Siegfried and Roy walked out on stage, Roy walked out with a 7-year-old white tiger. When he walked to the edge of the stage, something happened. No one really knows exactly what happened. Some people say there was a lady sitting there in the crowd with a big hairdo, and the tiger reacted to this lady's hair. Roy stepped in front of the tiger, trying to calm the tiger down. The tiger lunged and grabbed his arm. In his fight, he began to hit the tiger on the head with his microphone. The tiger lunged up, grabbed him around the neck, and in a matter of seconds, drug him off the stage. The one thing in all of the testimonies that saw it that was common was they would say, it drug him off like a rag doll. Once he got to the back, obviously, the emergency personnel got involved. They got the tiger separated, but Roy was never the same. You see, even though he had spent years and years and years doing this same thing, there was one problem. He was dealing with a dangerous animal, and at one moment, in one time, he let his guard down. The animal reacted as the animal is supposed to react, and his life was forever altered. When we come to James chapter 3, and we continue looking at the key to holy living, it's important to understand that our tongue is that way. Look at verse 5. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beast, and of bird, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. Doth the fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. James is laying out here for us and wants us to understand, though we spend our lives trying to tame and control our tongue, we have to remember that our tongue is just like that tiger. Yes, you've got to tame. Yes, he had it under control. But the minute it was out of its cage and the minute it reacted, there was nothing he could do. The damage was done. You know, it's interesting. As we get older, if we're trying to walk with the Lord, we can learn to control our tongue much better. We can begin to deal with it in a lot of ways. But the minute we forget that our tongue is like a wild animal and we let down our guard, our tongue can destroy just like that tiger did. So as James lays this out, he's wanting us to understand we've got to get a hold of this. We've got to control our tongue and guard against what can happen. Look at Roman numeral 1 there in your outline. James helps us to understand that great good can come from a controlled tongue, or alarming harm can come about by an uncontrolled tongue. You see, back up in verse 2, for in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in horses' mouths, and they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great and are driven by fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire can kindle. There are some great things that you can do with your tongue. There's also great harm. We got a couple men passing out bulletins. If you didn't get one, just kind of wave at them. They'll be glad to get you an outline this evening. We have to learn that if we will control our tongue, as Proverbs teaches so much about, that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. Oh, how we can lift up and exhort, but at the same time we can cause such damage. A there in the outline. The problem now presented by James is that the tongue is humanly uncontrollable. We can guard against it for a time. We can begin to put it into a box, and we can, with some self-discipline, learn in time to keep ourselves out of trouble, to keep from putting our foot in our mouth. But there will come a time, and something will come out of your mouth, and you'll just go, man, why did I say that? And you know at that moment that your tongue is that wild animal, and it's gotten you in trouble. Now, I don't have to ask for a show of hands, because I know everyone in here would say, yes, there has been a time in my life when my tongue has gotten me in trouble. I know every husband would say, there have been plenty of times in my life my tongue has gotten me in trouble. We have to learn to control it, because if not, there is an aspect of it that's going to get us. And then James goes on to say, he goes, look, you need to learn to control it, because we can do that with wild animals, but the problem is the tongue is uncontrollable. You go, well, Pastor, how can I learn to control it when it's uncontrollable? How do these two work together? Look at B. Man can have dominion over all the animals of creation, but the tongue is an untamed beast, accepting for a time the imposed restrictions we place upon it, until it suddenly turns savage. Proverbs says it this way, in the multitude of words there is no want of sin. So what we learn to do is we learn not to talk quite so much. I used to teach speech at college, and when I would teach, I would tell kids, because you know they're young people, and they would get up and they would be so scared to get up in front of people. So I'd always start off with a very motivational speech. I can promise you, if you talk in front of people enough, you will mess up. It's going to happen. There's no need to worry about it. I have done several weddings in my life. One of them, I called the groom the bride's brother's name. It happens. This past weekend, I did a wedding. It was outdoors. I was holding a microphone, my Bible, and my notes. I dropped my notes twice, right in front of everybody. One time the groom picked them up. One time the best man did. When you begin to speak, you're going to make mistakes sooner or later, because the tongue's uncontrollable. But there's a difference between getting your tang tangled up and saying something that really is offensive in revealing your sin nature. What we want is to recognize that that sin nature is in me, and it will come out. So I have to begin to work on what's inside so I control what's coming out. Look at C. James does not simply say that the tongue is untamable, but that it cannot be subdued by any power resident in mere human nature or possessed by a mere human being. This is where, especially in our media-driven age in which we live, people get themselves in so much trouble. They can go about and they can say the right thing for years, but the one time that their tongue gets the better of them, it's recorded and it's posted and it is sent out on social media. James is saying, look, it's not just that your tongue is this wild beast that will eventually, if you let it out, will bite you. It's that in it, you can't even subdue it because of what's inside of you is broken. So we've got to get the Holy Spirit of God working inside of us to help fix this problem. D, if we must say that the outworking of sin first appeared in the abuse of speech in Genesis 3:12, we must also say that the first act in the new creation was the renewal of the power of speech, a tongue declaring the wonderful works of God. So what you have here is a great picture. So my tongue can cause so much damage. And if you go back to the first outward appearance of sin in the Garden of Eden, and you look, it is Satan through his tongue deceiving Adam and Eve, really deceiving Eve, and he begins to speak, and then Eve gets involved in this, and she comes to Adam, and then Adam goes before God and says, no, the woman you gave me, and instantly, at that moment, we begin to see sin just unfurling itself through the tongue. But then, when Christ dies on the cross, we begin to see the plan of redemption unfolding. And the plan of redemption is equally around the tongue. It is through the foolishness of preaching that God saves those who will believe. So the purpose here is that people will proclaim the word. So the same tongue that caused all of the problems in the beginning is the same tongue that brings all of the redemption in the end. Look at E. It would be a marvelous display of the glory of Jesus Christ in our lives if our tongues were as his. In John 7:45-46, then came the officers to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said unto them, why have ye not brought him? And the officers answered, never a man spake like this man. A couple weeks ago, we looked at Stephen, and we talked about in Stephen how they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. If you asked the people around you who knew you best, what would they say about your speech? How would they define it? Would the accumulation of your words be never a man spake like this man? Or would the accumulation of your words be bitterness, be guile? Would they be words that are hurtful and pulling down? Roman numeral 2. It is the deadly sin of inconsistency that the tongue so quickly launches us into. That's what James in this next part is trying to get us to understand. So there is in us an aspect of our tongue that's uncontrollable, that is dangerous. When we recognize it, we begin to deal with it. What we have to understand is that it is not something that once I've dealt with it once, it's continually dealt with. It is the inconsistency in my tongue that is such a problem. Look back at the passage. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men which are made after the similitude of God. So how are these two things taking place? You see there in A, we use the tongue for two opposite, irreconcilable purposes: to bless and to curse. Isn't this so true? Good. You can have a good day, quote unquote, and you can be dealing with someone who is difficult to deal with. And yet on that day, you're having a good day, and your tongue can lift them up and push them forward and encourage them. A few days later, you can be having not such a good day. And that same difficult person comes to you, and now all of a sudden your tongue tears that person down. Oh, how we have to balance those two and recognize this is the danger. And it's that inconsistency where I can bless and I can curse. Isn't it interesting how in life so often, when we are in an extremely good place spiritually, we talk about the Lord and we encourage, and shortly after that, if we don't guard our hearts, we get into a bad place spiritually. And then the same mouth that was blessing and praising God is now bringing God down. Yeah. There it be. Our inconsistency is further compounded by the fact that we bless and curse the same thing. the image of God. That's what he's trying to help us understand. Look, if man's created in my image, and you look at God, and you say, whoa, 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 I would never take the name of the Lord in vain. I would never allow someone around me to bring down God. Oh, no, 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 we don't talk like that in my house. But then you take the individual who is made in the image of God. And let's be honest, we even go beyond that, because that statement is true of all mankind. But wouldn't it even be a little bit more true about fellow believers?
That's true.
And then we take those who are made in the image of God, who are now children of God, and we tear them down. I'm not saying that when someone is living in sin and someone is doing wrong, that we don't recognize the wrong. But I'm just saying it's much easier to dwell on the wrong than it is to dwell on the right. Look one more verse or letter C here. We think of Jesus and count it a shame if his glory is despised or his name used dishonorable. But the same glorious image of God in other people, we hardly hesitate to speak ill of. I've thought, wouldn't it be great if someone would come along and start a news service, and there was a channel you could turn to, and there was news on the channel, and everything on that channel was positive? You know the only problem? It'd go bankrupt. Nobody would watch it. Because everybody wants to know what's going wrong in the world. Nobody wants to know what's going right. You go, oh no, I would love it. But after a while you go, but who got killed? Yeah, I need to know, but what happened? What did this person say about this person? How did they run down this political person? What's going on? And we instantly gravitate towards that negative. And it's that sin nature that gravitates that way, and then in turn is what's inside of us and eventually comes out of us. There would be some of you in here who would be perhaps old enough, or you just had this person in your life, and it was a grandparent, a parent, somewhere along the way, and they didn't talk bad about people, and they didn't let you do it in front of them. And if you dared to say anything bad about a president, whether they voted for him or not, if you dared to say anything bad about a pastor, whether you liked him or not, they would instantly jump all over you about it, because you didn't do that. That was just, you did not act that way. Well, now it's become socially acceptable. And even more than that, it's become sellable. And so we've taken our tongue. We say, but I wouldn't talk bad about Jesus Christ, but his image bearers I'll bring down. The thing is, it's not new. Because here's James writing it 2,000 years ago and going, but that's the same problem we're facing. Here are these Jews who have grown up religiously, who are now scattered abroad, and there are all of these Gentiles coming into the church, and they're struggling. They don't know what to do, and they're running them down. And James is going, whoa, 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 no, no, no. You want to know one of the keys to holy living? You control that tongue. You don't talk that way. Look at D. As a result of our inconsistency, the tongue needs guarding, lest it leave a bitter taste behind it wherever it makes itself felt. Most relationships that you know that are fractured, to where the relationship is not good anymore. And I'm not talking just about in a marriage. I'm talking about in a family. I'm talking about in a church, just in a friendship. When you talk about a relationship that is fractured, most of the time, there was absolutely nothing physically done to you. Most of the time, it was something that was said to you. You go, well, I don't like the way they said that. Well, they don't have any right to say that. Well, who do they think they are? Why are they talking to me like that? Am I their dog? Come on, no, you don't talk to me that way. Instantly, the tongue has caused that division. And that division just begins to stretch and to grow. Why? Because the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity, and it just burns it up. Hey, when we control and we guard. Now, we looked at this a couple weeks ago. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So when I begin to guard my heart, because out of it are the issues of life, and I change what's inside of me, now all of a sudden, my tongue and what's coming out is different because what's inside is different. So when I guard my tongue, what I'm really saying here is I have to guard what's inside. As a parent with small children, we are very conscious of what our kids watch because we don't want them to pick up words. And there are certain words that you and I, they would not be bad words to us. But because they're a child, you don't want your child running around saying people are dumb all the time, you know. We don't let our children talk about cheating because they cheated just because you lost the game. So, you know, these are not bad words, but these are words. Well, we were watching a little cartoon on the trip we were just on, and it was in the car playing, and I don't know what it was. It was something like Huckleberry Hound or some old school cartoon. And they said something along those lines. And Jesse goes, "Oh, Mommy, they said a bad word in this show." And why are we so careful about that? Because we know when a word goes in that eventually it'll come out. So we want to control what's going in as much as we can until they learn a better filter. But as adults, we pump in the wrong things, and our filter gets slack. And every now and then, the wrong thing comes out. And the reason it does is because it's wrong inside. So how do I fix that? How do I control that? I am constantly mindful and constantly guarding and constantly putting in the right thing. You see, we instantly think of guarding as just blocking out, but it's more than that. It's keeping the right thing in. Look at E there in the outline. Ultimately, the problems of the tongue come back to the problems of the heart. Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. If the wrong fruit's being produced, it's because it's the wrong inside, the wrong heart. If I'm connected to the vine and I am in Christ and I am abiding in Him, then what is in Him will come out in me. So how do I functionally do that? How do I functionally take what's inside of me and get it out of me? And so that what's always coming out is what it ought to be. Well, I think it's going to be a little bit different for all of us. But don't be naive enough to think, I don't need to focus on putting good things in. I've already got enough good inside of me. Because the world's constantly bombarding us with bad things. Have you ever been just driving down the road and somebody pulled in front of you and it made you mad? And you wanted to say something about them? And if nobody's in the car, you might have, maybe not a curse word, but you said something that's just not kind. I catch it because I have kids in the car. So I'll say something like, "Oh, come on." And then somebody does it and my kids go, "Oh, come on." Okay, you got to stop saying that. And I think the problem is what I said, when it's not the problem at all. The problem is that there's pride in my heart that doesn't think it's okay for them to be in front of me. And when you recognize what's coming out is revealing what's inside, then you have to really deal with what's inside. And when you deal with what's inside and you begin to fix your heart, now all of a sudden, that holy living begins to pour out of us. That's who Christ has called us to be. In just a minute, we will divide up and we'll take a time to pray. As you do, let me just ask you if you would to pray specifically for one family. They're not on our prayer list. I just found out about them. Tim Johnson was my assistant pastor growing up when I was a young person, and his wife passed away unexpectedly today. And so Brother Tim would have been I don't know, maybe early 60s, something like that. So Miss Robbie would have been somewhere in that age range as well. So if you just pray for the Johnson family, I know that they would greatly appreciate that, and I certainly would as well. Divide up, find somebody to pray with. If you're going to choir practice, you can slip out. That's over in room 105.